Hello, let's see if this makes sense to you. This is today's mentor text, and it's from the story Holes. Rattlesnakes would be a lot more dangerous if they didn't have the rattle. Went ahead and labeled a few things. We know that rattlesnakes is a noun, and rattle is a noun. Be is a linking verb. Would is the helping verb to make that verb phrase. They is a pronoun. So let's move forward with the rest of the sentence. We have some more verbs to go, okay? Have is going to be an action verb because it shows something you can do. But didn't is tricky, right? Because really, didn't is two words in one, did and not. So we're going to divide this up because really, I think we need to make sure that we show that not is in there. And did and not are doing two different functions. So did is actually the helping verb, and not, let's make sure it stands alone over here, huh? It's not part of the verb. So we're going to set that aside for now. Um, we've got our subjects, we've got our verbs, we've got our pronouns, we've got our nouns. So let's get our describing words. Dangerous is an adjective that talks about the rattlesnakes. We have a, which technically is an adjective, it's an article, and same thing for the. Talked about that before. Adjectives only modify nouns and pronouns, but adverbs modify everything else. Sorry, it's a little loud in the hall right now. Adverbs can modify verbs, but also adjectives and more adverbs. And that's exactly what's going on with these two words. More is telling you how dangerous, it's describing that adjective as an adverb. Lot is telling you how much more. It is also an adverb. And finally, not. That is an adverb that is describing how it did have. It did have not. So nt and not are not verbs. They're instead an adverb. Okay? All right, that's everything except if. But let's hold off on that for a minute. It looks like we got like a few things going on with subjects and verbs. So let's start underlining, okay? Subject, rattlesnakes, and our verb phrases would be. Okay, so that's one clause that has a subject and a verb. And if you look closely down here, here's another subject. They, and then the verb phrase is did have. All right. Usually when we have this going on, we have somewhere around here usually, because you can see this is kind of where the natural break is. Rattlesnakes would be a lot more dangerous. That could stand alone. But this if is throwing things off. Usually right here when we're joining things, we would have fanboys, right? Those are coordinating conjunctions. But we don't have one. Instead we got if. In this situation, if is indeed a conjunction. It's just not a fanboys conjunction. It's something we call a subordinate conjunction. And subordinate conjunctions are words like if, because, besides. There's a whole bunch, and it's hard to actually know the list because some words can act like conjunctions and prepositions. So it's better to look at how they're working rather than memorizing a list. But if is a joining word that's connecting this part to the independent clause. The challenge is when that happens and you don't have a fanboys, whatever that conjunction is that's trying to join them, that subordinate conjunction, joining things that aren't the same, that conjunction becomes part of that clause that it's connecting. So you're left with if they didn't have the rattle. And that cannot stand alone as its own sentence. because it's got a subject, it's got a predicate, but it doesn't express a complete thought. And because of that, it is now a dependent clause. And when you have an independent clause and a dependent clause, the type of sentence you now have is a complex sentence. And there you go. There's your complex sentence. Notice that there's no comma here. If that complex sentence started with the dependent clause, so if it said, if they didn't have the rattle, rattlesnakes would be a lot more dangerous. If that were the way it were constructed, you probably would have a comma after the rattle before the independent clause. But if the dependent clause comes second, comma's not necessary. All right, I hope that helps a little. If you have any questions, just let me know.